Patrick McNeil back here with you at the intermission. And throughout the year, we like to touch on different stories within the game of hockey. And I'm joined now by Richard Ranni, who is a local resident here in Sydney. But we're not talking to him about his days in Sydney. We're talking about the fact that Richard was, at one point, a member of the Bermudan national ball hockey team. Richard, how does the Cape Brettoner end up representing Bermuda internationally in ball hockey?
That's a good question. My wife and I moved to Bermuda in 2001. I remember when we went down there, I remember legitimately thinking how much I was going to miss playing ice hockey. There's no ice, obviously, in Bermuda. I was pretty excited to learn just after arriving that there was actually a ball hockey league there. So I started in the league right away. Missed out on the first World Ball Hockey Championships they went to. It was actually in 2001, just before I got there. From what I understand, it was just a bunch of guys heard that there was a World Ball Hockey Championships and decided to enter a team. They actually went up and won the B pool. It was pretty exciting stuff.
No doubt about that. I'm assuming if there was a league locally in Bermuda, would that be almost like an all-star team of players from that league, or would it just be who was ever able to go? How do they go about forming a team?
Probably a little bit of both, depending on the year. The Ball Hockey Championships are every 2 years. About a year in advance, they probably start getting the coaching and the team together, start asking for interest, announcing tryouts. Goes from there. In some years, I think they probably just get enough guys to kind of put a team together. Other years, they might have to make a cut or two.
There is obviously some overlap between high-level ball hockey and high-level ice hockey. I know in our broadcast, Connor Short will talk about playing ball hockey, and I think Robert Slaney, former Eagle, had been involved at a high level as well. How exciting is that event to attend? How high-profile is it? How many teams? What kind of crowds are you getting? What's the experience like?
The one I went and played in was 2003. We played in a town, Sierre, Switzerland. And it's really quite funny, especially the Bermuda national team is largely made up of 30-year-old or older guys, and the players we're playing against are in their early 20s. So right. In terms of strategy, the Bermuda team is very smart. They've done very well over the years. There's certainly some very talented players, but we're certainly on the longer end of the tooth. So there's a lot of 1-1-3 trap systems and things like that to kind of even it out, and they're very successful at it. The experience itself is amazing. When we were in Switzerland, at the beginning of the tournament, we actually did a parade through the town, and it was just surreal. Like a 30-year-old accountant at the time, not a professional athlete by any stretch, and walking through and having all these people kind of lined up in the streets and waving flags at you and things like that. It was pretty awesome. And we actually got to play Switzerland in that tournament. Of course, it was a packed house. I don't know how big the arena was, 2,500, 3,000 people. Certainly the largest crowd I've ever played in front of, and the atmosphere was just electric.
Pretty cool. I think you had mentioned, too, at one point you did get the chance to play against Canada. Any familiar names on that Canadian team?
There was two very familiar names, or at least one very familiar to most people would be Alex Burrows. Before he made it in the NHL, he was actually on Team Canada, and as you can imagine, he was their best player, their leading goal scorer. The other player that some people may recognize is Terry Ryan, former first-round pick of the Habs from Newfoundland. And we actually stayed in the same hotel as Team Canada. I remember our goalie was trying to recruit Burrows to come to Bermuda, trying to get him a job so he could play for the Bermuda national team, but I think he made the right choice to go the NHL direction.
What could have been an alternate history? Was he a pest on the floor as well as he is on the ice?
Yeah, he was. He definitely had some very interesting goal celebrations, let's put it that way.
Very interesting. So, as I mentioned, the national team kind of comes as a byproduct of this league. Bermuda, for those people that are not familiar, it's not a very big place. How big of a league are they drawing from? Is it pretty much all Canadians, maybe some Americans? How much of a local influence is there in this league?
They probably get about 70 to 80 guys on the year, so it's probably anywhere from 6 to 8 teams. Largely Canadian. I would say when I was there, it was probably 55 to 60 Canadians, and then probably 5 to 10 Americans, 5 to 10 Bermudians. I expect that Bermudian number will rise. One of the things they've been doing down there is they have an inline hockey league for the kids, like a rollerblade league, and there's a lot of Bermudians kind of coming up through that league, so I would expect you'll see that number take on more of a Bermuda flavor in the future.
Has that league spurred any sort of culture in terms of ice hockey support? As you said, obviously there's no natural ice in Bermuda, but are there any rinks? And if there's not any rinks, is there any sort of presence for people being into the NHL as fans, for example, just for local people?
It's an interesting question. When we were down there, when I first went down, there was no CBC, no TSN, nothing like that. So when the playoffs came around, the bars just came alive. It was literally every hockey fan on the island packing into 2 or 3 sports bars for about 2 months in a row. That was quite the amazing experience.
I would think, if you mentioned if there's no availability of ice, because I experience as somebody who plays rec ball hockey, sometimes it can be tough to get players because people are prioritizing rec ice hockey over that. From your experience, maybe some of the guys in this league are using that as a replacement because there is no ice hockey available?
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, it's really quite the experience. A lot of guys, I think, kind of have that experience when they move down there. I think just about everybody is probably a former ice hockey player, although not everyone, I would say. It really is quite the brotherhood for sure.
And obviously the local players, as you mentioned, the Bermudans in the league would probably be coming over from other sports more so than ice hockey.
Yeah, that's probably a fair statement. Honestly, some of the Bermudians that were in the league at the time probably had some kind of Canadian connection,
Right.
Relatives or family in Canada. But yeah, probably not playing ice hockey growing up.
The last one I wanted to ask, because we were talking about how the team structure in the league worked, it seemed pretty cool how the teams in the league that you played in are named after different teams. Tell us a little bit about that. Was there ever a Cape Breton team in this league?
I don't believe there was ever a Cape Breton team that I know of, but they basically used to have fun with the teams in the league. They would change the names every year or two, and one year they would use the name of all junior team. I played on the Oshawa Generals for a year or so. Another year it was all the teams from the movie Slapshot. I played for the Chiefs for a few years. Right. There was another year that we picked all the defunct NHL teams, the Colorado Rockies, the Hartford Whalers, and the Winnipeg Jets when they were still out of the league, Quebec Nordiques. It adds a bit of flavor to the league for sure.
Really cool, and as I said, we'd like hitting on different aspects of hockey culture. I think people would be very impressed to know that there is a Canadian represented Bermuda internationally. Thanks for telling us all about it, Richard. I know you're in Cape Breton now, but best of luck to all the guys down there still making that league work, and thanks for telling us all about it.
Absolutely. Thanks, Pat.
That is Richard Ranni, lives right here in Sydney, but is a former member of the Bermudan national ball hockey team. As I said, very interesting stuff telling us about the league down there. You're listening to The Intermission of Cape Breton Credit Union, Eagles Hockey, 1270 CJCB.